Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever witnessed a miracle so sweet, so picture-perfect, that you just knew something shady had to be hiding behind it? Well, buckle up, because Yandy's so-called miracle recovery is about to flip into the kind of nightmare plot twist Netflix would reject for being too unrealistic. One moment, she's opening her eyes after a near-death battle, the family crying, fans cheering, Instagram pages lighting up like it's Christmas morning. And the next? Doctors whispering in hushed tones, papers slipping out like scandalous love letters, and a truth so messy it makes reality TV look like Sunday school. But here's the question. Was this recovery really a blessing? Or just a glossy headline crafted to keep the empire intact? Because let's be real, when has a love and hip-hop storyline not come with betrayal, breakdowns, and a trail of receipts no one wants you to see? Imagine Mendeecees breaking down on camera while the same doctors smiling for photo ops are allegedly hiding files that could wreck reputations. And you, the audience, are left asking, are we watching a medical miracle? Or the biggest stage performance of Yandy's career? Stay right here, because what I uncovered will leave you questioning everything. So let's set the stage. Yandy Smith, yes, that Yandy, the businesswoman, love and hip-hop star, social media mogul, and apparently now, the center of a recovery story that has the internet spiraling faster than a Kardashian in a PR crisis. Just weeks ago, the world was clutching their pearls, gasping over headlines screaming that Yandy was fighting for her life. Fans were crying, enemies were side-eyeing, and Mendeecees? He was caught on camera collapsing outside the ICU like the tragic husband from a telenovela nobody asked for. But here's where it gets juicy. Because while the world was praying, reposting hashtags, and sending Stay Strong Queen messages, there was a whole different story unfolding behind those hospital doors. And trust me, it wasn't the sanitized miracle comeback version the family was pushing out to the public. Let's rewind. This isn't the first time Yandy's name has been tangled up in scandal. Remember her endless drama on Love and Hip Hop? From business feuds to messy relationships, she's practically built a career on dodging accountability while turning tears into TV gold. And don't forget her carefully curated social media persona. Half boss lady, half perfect wife and mother, with just enough vulnerability sprinkled in to keep the fan base hooked. But this so-called recovery, might just be the biggest plot twist of them all. Sources close to the situation claim the hospital wasn't exactly the holy sanctuary we were led to believe. Leaked whispers suggest doctors were under pressure to release carefully worded updates that conveniently painted Yandy as a fighter, a miracle survivor, a woman reborn. But if you peel back the curtain, some insiders allege she was in way deeper trouble than anyone let on. And let me tell you, the phrase unexpected truth doesn't even begin to cover it. Picture this: a dim hospital corridor, security guards pacing, nurses avoiding eye contact, and family members sneaking out side doors to avoid paparazzi. It sounds like the setup to a bad soap opera, but it was real life. Allegedly, Yandy's condition wasn't improving the way the family claimed. Anonymous medical staff supposedly told reporters that there were complications, contradictions, and let's just say, files being misplaced. And isn't it funny how those misplaced files always seem to go missing right when careers are on the line? Meanwhile, Mendeecees was out here making tearful appearances, crying into cameras about his wife's strength, while conveniently dodging questions about his own shady financial past. Yeah, let's not forget this man's rap sheet. While fans were sympathizing with his heartbreak, critics were whispering that maybe, just maybe, the family was using Yandy's health crisis to shield themselves from other storms brewing in the background. And oh, the background is loud. Rumors of unpaid debts, suspicious partnerships, and a certain business deal gone wrong have been circulating for months. Some folks believe the recovery story was less about medical triumph and more about narrative control, because nothing distracts the internet faster than a dramatic hospital comeback. It's the oldest play in the Celebrity Crisis Management Handbook. When the walls start closing in, you throw a tragedy at the public. Let them cry with you. And suddenly nobody's asking about the money trail. But here's where it spirals into straight-up scandal territory. Multiple alleged eyewitnesses claim they saw official-looking men in suits visiting the hospital late at night. And no, these weren't doctors. We're talking lawyers, PR reps, and maybe even a politician or two. Why? What business do politicians have in a private medical recovery? Unless, of course, this wasn't just about health. Unless Yandy's hospital bed had become ground zero for a cover-up bigger than anyone expected. Now, the internet never sleeps, and fans are no fools. Social media detectives began piecing together inconsistencies. One day, Yandy's family would post that she was awake and smiling. The next day, sources leaked that she was still heavily sedated. Screenshots of Mendeecees' posts didn't help. Fans pointed out he reused old photos to make it seem like they were taken in real time. Imagine grieving fans realizing the comforting hospital selfie they shared to their stories was actually recycled from last year's anniversary post. Talk about betrayal. And speaking of betrayal, let's not pretend Yandy herself is some innocent victim of media spin. This is a woman who has always known how to weaponize narrative. Remember when she staged a protest in front of a correctional facility, complete with cameras and branded t-shirts? Admirable on the surface, sure, but critics accused her of turning activism into a photo shoot. So if anyone knows how to milk a hospital storyline, it's her. But here's where the story cuts deep. If the whispers are true, if doctors really did drop an unexpected truth about Yandy's recovery, then we're not just looking at PR manipulation. We're looking at potential fraud, stage deception, and maybe even medical malpractice. Think about it. A recovery miracle sells hope, headlines, and Instagram engagement. But a recovery lie? That sells distrust, anger, and scandal. Anonymous insiders claim that the real reason for Yandy's extended ICU stay wasn't just a medical crisis, but a cover story to buy time. Time for what exactly? To clean up accounts? To scrub certain names from documents? To rebrand her image before the next business venture launches? Nobody knows for sure. But when a hospital stay looks more like a business meeting than a healing process, you know something is off. And let's talk about the public reactions. Because hoo boy, the internet was in rare form. Some fans were fully invested, writing prayers longer than essays, sending flowers, and even donating to GoFundMe campaigns that, wait for it, might not even have been directly tied to the family. Yeah, imagine donating to what you think is Yandy's recovery fund, only to find out it's run by some management affiliate. Messy doesn't even begin to describe it. On the flip side, skeptics were quick to pounce. Twitter threads went viral, breaking down every inconsistency. TikTok sleuths compared timelines, and Reddit was basically on fire with conspiracy theories. Was Yandy ever really in as much danger as we were told? Was Mendeecees' emotional collapse just a performance? Was the entire ordeal less about life and death and more about image and control? And the kicker? Some fans who claimed to be outside the hospital reported that things didn't match the picture painted online. One even said, it was way too quiet for what they claimed was happening. No crowds, no doctors rushing, just silence. That silence, my friends, might have been the loudest sound of all. Which brings us to the breaking point. The whispers turned into murmurs, the murmurs into questions, and finally, boom, the alleged unexpected truth from the doctors began to surface. Reports claim that her so-called miracle recovery was exaggerated at best and fabricated at worst. That while she was indeed treated for complications, the severity of her condition was dramatically inflated to create the perfect sympathy storm. And when that storm hit, it worked. Public sympathy soared, headlines ran, and suddenly every messy subplot in Yandy and Mendeecees' world was buried under hashtags like Aussie Pray for Yandy. It was brilliant, manipulative, and if proven true, completely unethical. But the real kicker? We're just scratching the surface. Because if the doctor's revelations are accurate, then the recovery wasn't just a lie. It was a chess move in a much bigger scandal. And when those pieces start to move, entire families crumble. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly where things take an even darker turn. So there it was, the bombshell nobody saw coming. Doctors allegedly dropping the unexpected truth about Yandy's recovery. And trust me, the fallout was instant. Fans who had been clinging to every word of hope now found themselves betrayed, manipulated, and frankly, furious. Imagine sending prayers, reposting hashtags, defending Yandy against trolls, only to find out the so-called miracle comeback was laced with exaggeration, half-truths, and possibly outright lies. And when the internet feels scammed, oh baby, it burns. Internet feels scammed, oh baby, it burns. Twitter threads became digital crime scenes, with users pulling up screenshots of every inconsistent update. Instagram pages started dragging Yandy with side-by-side comparisons. One day, awake and alert. The next day, still in critical condition. TikTok detectives had field days zooming in on hospital bracelets, analyzing timestamps and pointing out how Mendeecees' teary photos didn't match the supposed timeline. One viral post summed it up perfectly. If this is recovery, then I'm Santa Claus. But this wasn't just about memes and sarcasm. The backlash hit hard because people felt emotionally exploited. Fans invested their time, their money, their prayers, only to learn the family might have been running the oldest PR scam in the book. Sympathy baiting. And the crazy part? This isn't the first time the Smith-Harris brand has been accused of manipulating narratives for clout. Anonymous sources claim Yandy's team had already drafted press releases, lined up interviews, and even pitched documentary deals before she was officially out of danger. Think about that for a second. Before the patient allegedly even stabilized, there were whispers of a recovery special, sponsorship tie-ins, and branded comeback merch. One insider put it bluntly. It wasn't about healing. It was about monetizing the healing. And here's where Mendeecees' role gets stickier than a bad contract. Remember his dramatic collapse outside the ICU? Turns out, leaked footage from another angle shows him glancing at cameras before he dropped. Coincidence? Maybe. Performance? Highly likely. Internet sleuths didn't miss a beat. One tweet with over 100K likes read, "This man looked at the paparazzi like an actor waiting for action." Before collapsing, somebody give him an Oscar. Ouch. Meanwhile, whispers started circulating that Mendeecees had been in contact with PR teams during the supposed most critical hours of Yandy's hospitalization. Phone records allegedly show multiple calls between him and a well-known crisis manager, calls made at the exact same time family members were asking fans to pray. If that doesn't scream scripted, I don't know what does. But here's the million-dollar question. Why go through all this trouble? Why risk public trust with such a risky performance? Simple. Control the narrative, control the money. Let's not forget, the Smith-Harris empire is built on perception. From love and hip-hop checks to endorsement deals to speaking engagements, everything depends on the public seeing Yandy as a resilient, inspiring, relatable queen. A near-death scare followed by a miraculous recovery? That's PR gold. It sells books. It sells shows. It sells hope. And as one sarcastic Twitter user put it, nothing makes you brandable like almost dying. And let's talk about those alleged leaked hospital files. Supposedly, a whistleblower nurse claimed Yandy's condition was never as severe as her team painted it. Yes, she had complications, but life or death? That was apparently a stretch. In fact, the nurse claimed her vitals were stable most of the time. She was being monitored, yes, but it wasn't nearly as dramatic as the family claimed. They made it sound like she was on her last breath. That simply wasn't true. If this account is accurate, then Yandy's recovery story shifts from miraculous to manipulative, and the internet did not take it lightly. Comment sections turned into war zones. On one side, loyal fans defending her, saying even if details were exaggerated, she still went through something scary. On the other side, a wave of outrage with people accusing her of playing with people's emotions for clout. And you know who else noticed? The media. Tabloids, gossip blogs, even mainstream outlets couldn't resist. Headlines like, "Was Yandy's miracle recovery just smoke and mirrors?" and "Mendeecees under fire for exploiting wife's hospitalization" began popping up everywhere. Every outlet wanted a piece of the pie. Suddenly, Yandy's name was trending, but not for the reasons she wanted. Meanwhile, the so-called suits spotted at the hospital. Yeah, those weren't just rumors anymore. Multiple eyewitnesses confirmed seeing lawyers and PR strategists holding late-night meetings in hospital conference rooms. Let that sink in. While fans thought doctors were fighting to save Yandy's life, insiders claimed the real fight was over how to spin the story, and the spin was messy. For example, an alleged leaked draft statement, never officially released, suggested that Yandy had clinically died for 3 minutes before being revived. Dramatic, right? Only problem? No medical staff could confirm it. When pressed, her team refused to comment. Why? Probably because it wasn't true. But if you thought that was bad, wait until you hear about the money trail. Multiple charity campaigns popped up during Yandy's supposed crisis. Some claimed to be raising funds for hospital bills, others for supporting the family through hard times. The catch? Hospital insiders say Yandy's bills were covered by insurance. So where did those donations go? Nobody knows. Reddit threads blew up with users tracking shady GoFundMe pages linked to family friends who, funny enough, had ties to the Smith-Harris brand. One thread even accused them of laundering donations into a new business venture. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen, but the stench of exploitation was strong. And just when you thought this circus couldn't get any wilder, enter the celebrities. Some showed love, posting stay strong messages and pledging prayers. Others, though, they were savage. A certain rapper, let's call him anonymous but obvious, tweeted, "Ain't no miracle, just marketing. Y'all keep falling for it." The shade was undeniable, but the most brutal reaction came from fans themselves. People who once adored Yandy started unfollowing in droves. Hashtags flipped from pray for Yandy to scam for clout. TikTokers mocked the situation with parody skits, pretending to be doctors reading scripted lines. "She's stable. Critical. No wait, miracle. Cut, print, upload." The internet had turned, and once it turns, there's no going back. Yet through all the chaos, Yandy's camp stayed quiet. Too quiet. For days, no statements, no clarifications, just silence. And you know what silence does? It fuels suspicion. If this were all lies, why not clear the air? If it were all true, why not show proof? Instead, all we got were vague Instagram posts with captions like "Trust the journey" and "God's plan." Translation: dodge, deflect, distract. And while the family might have thought silence would calm the storm, it only made the storm louder. People wanted answers. They wanted transparency. Instead, they got spiritual quotes and recycled photos. And that gap between truth and spin, that's where scandals are born. Which brings us to the fallout phase. Because when a scandal hits this hard, there are always consequences. And trust me, those consequences were just starting to unfold. So here we are. The storm has broken, the curtain has been pulled back, and the Smith-Harris empire is standing on shaking ground. If part 1 gave us the setup and part 2 delivered the explosion, then part 3 is the fallout, the ugly aftermath that not even the slickest PR team can polish into a happy ending. Because when doctors drop unexpected truths, when money trails go missing, and when the public feels scammed, the consequences don't just fade away. They escalate. Fast. Let's start with the most immediate ripple effect, the hospital. Once whispers about manipulated files and staged updates began to circulate, outside agencies swooped in. Allegedly, a quiet review committee from the state health department launched an investigation into how Yandy's condition was reported. Questions like, did staff falsify documents under pressure? Were doctors coerced into playing along? And most damning, was patient confidentiality breached in favor of media optics? If even half of those questions come back yes, that's not just scandal, that's malpractice. And you know how hospitals react to scandal, with silence, lawyers, and sudden no-comment statements. Which only made things worse. Because when institutions clam up, the internet assumes guilt. Forums filled with speculation about shady hospital administrators cutting deals with celebrity handlers. Some users even suggested that money changed hands to keep certain details buried. True or not, the suspicion was enough to drag the hospital's reputation into the mud. Meanwhile, over in Camp Yandy, the pressure cooker was boiling over. Insiders whispered about cracks forming in the family unit. On the surface, Instagram showed unity, smiling photos, vague inspirational captions. We stand together energy. But behind the scenes, sources claimed screaming matches, finger-pointing, and breakdowns that made Mendeecees' ICU collapse look like amateur hour. One insider said, they thought the plan would bring sympathy. Instead, it's tearing them apart. And it wasn't just emotional strain, it was financial. Remember those charity campaigns? Well, once the internet started connecting dots, GoFundMe had no choice but to freeze several accounts tied to the Smith-Harris network. Imagine the embarrassment. One minute you're collecting thousands in support, the next minute the platform shuts it all down because of fraud concerns. Suddenly, instead of sympathy money rolling in, you've got lawyers asking where the first batch of funds went. But wait, it gets worse. Because where there's scandal, there's usually a government watchdog waiting to pounce. And sure enough, Rumors began swirling that the IRS had taken an interest in the family's finances. Nothing confirmed, of course, but think about it. Suspicious donations, questionable business ventures, lavish spending, and now a public scandal drawing attention? It's basically sending the IRS a handwritten invitation. Come audit me, love, Yandy. Come audit me, love, Yandy. Public backlash, meanwhile, reached peak chaos. Fans who once defended Yandy with their whole chest now turned into the harshest critics. Comments on her posts went from "Stay Strong Queen" to "Scam Queen" overnight. Memes flooded timelines, photoshopped hospital beds with dollar signs on the monitors, Mendeecees crying into a bag of money, and parody documentaries titled "Keeping Up with the Smith Harrises: The Recovery Scam." It was brutal, relentless, and honestly kind of hilarious if you weren't on the receiving end. And then came the celebrity pile-on. Remember how some stars had already thrown shade in part 2? Well, by now it was open season. One reality TV rival allegedly said in a podcast, Yandy's recovery had more writers than Love and Hip Hop. Another influencer joked, "If I ever need cash, I'm faking a coma too." Even brands began quietly distancing themselves, canceling collabs and postponing partnerships. Because nothing kills sponsorships faster than being labeled a scammer. But perhaps the most devastating fallout came from within the fan base. Yandy built her empire on relatability, on being the woman who overcame it all. But once fans felt played, that relatability shattered. Her DMs, once flooded with love, now filled with venom. TikToks with millions of views mocked her every move. Hashtags like #cancel Yandy started trending. And when you lose the internet's trust, good luck getting it back. Now let's zoom out and talk about the bigger implications. Because scandals like this don't just stain reputations, they trigger systemic ripple effects. Already, whispers of congressional inquiries into celebrity exploitation of medical systems began surfacing. Imagine that, Yandy's hospital stunt sparking government hearings. It sounds ridiculous, but in a media-obsessed world, totally possible. And then there's the cultural conversation. Think pieces started popping up about the commodification of tragedy, and how reality TV culture taught us to monetize pain. Suddenly, Yandy wasn't just a scandal, she was a case study. Professors debated it, journalists milked it, and social commentators used it as proof that influencer culture has gone too far. In other words, she became bigger than her own brand, but not in the way she wanted. But let's bring it back to the family, because at the end of the day, the Smith-Harris empire wasn't built on policy debates. It was built on drama. And oh, the drama was nuclear. Imagine Mendeecees, already fighting to hold the narrative together, now being accused of staging breakdowns for the cameras. Imagine Yandy, allegedly fuming that her miracle was being exposed as marketing. Imagine kids caught in the middle, family dinners turning into screaming matches, and once loyal relatives leaking juicy details to blogs just to cash in on the chaos. And remember those anonymous men in suits spotted at the hospital? Yeah, word on the street is they weren't just PR flacks, they were damage control specialists, flown in specifically to keep the family from collapsing under pressure. Did they succeed? Judging by the fallout, not really. So what's next? Some say lawsuits, donors demanding refunds, watchdog groups investigating where the money went, maybe even patients suing the hospital for prioritizing celebrity PR over real care. Others say career freefall. With her credibility shredded, will networks, brands, and fans still invest in Yandy? Or has her empire turned to rubble overnight? And here's the cruel irony. For years, Yandy positioned herself as the strong, unbreakable matriarch, the woman who holds it all together no matter what. But in the end, it wasn't outside enemies, legal battles, or rival castmates that brought her down. It was her own team's decision to gamble with the truth. Because let's face it, fans will forgive mistakes, they'll forgive drama, they'll even forgive crime if you spin it right. But what they don't forgive, feeling played. And right now, the whole world feels played. So where does that leave us? With a family in freefall, a reputation in ruins, and a scandal that shows no signs of dying down. The Smith-Harris brand has always thrived on drama, but this time, the drama might just consume them. And if you think this is the end, think again. Because as one anonymous insider warned, the truth hasn't even fully come out yet. What you've seen is just the tip of the iceberg. Ladies and gentlemen, if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, I don't know what will.